So welcome to the first of many, I hope, Culture Trip tech events. We've got three fantastic talks for you this evening. We've got Nick, Jeff, and Dave. I guess that's it. That's all I need to say. I'd like to welcome up Nick. So Nick is our Chief Product Officer. He's worked at a couple of companies you've heard of probably beforehand. He's worked at, so he joined us from Facebook. Before that, he was at Google. One of the things that he was keen to tell me that I introduced him, bearing in mind the audience, that he was once an engineer. So please stay and listen to everything that he's got to say. It will be good. I've heard Nick speak before, obviously.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is this working? Okay, so thank you very much. Let us start with a little video.
It did give me an amazing sense of freedom.
A intenção dos meus trabalhos é falar sobre a união dos povos e o respeito entre as culturas.
ผมชกมวยตั้งแต่อายุ8 ขวบครับถ้าจำได้ประมาณ300 ครั้งก็อยากจะได้แชมป์อยากจะ
I don't think 2 parents is enough to raise a child, to be honest. I think come to the barbershop, it made me mature.
O mundo é feito de sons. Essa falta da visão pode ter sido uma libertação para mim viver melhor assim, com meus grilos, com meus fantasmas.
It was fascinating as a child having a father who travelled regularly. It's pushed me to be who I am. So I'm very much a product of my environment in that sense, yeah.
Okay. So, with that auspicious start, let me tell you what's special about Culture Trip. So as you may have worked out from the introductory video, we are about travel. And this graph shows just how over time the number of travelers around the world is going up. So this is international tourist arrivals, and you can see it's just going up and going up exponentially. You can see a lot of travel from Europe, a lot of travel from Americas. You can see Asia and Pacific going up. People are traveling more and more. However, when you look at how they are traveling, you see that this is really changing. So this is guidebook sales from 2006 to 2015. And as you can see, it's basically halved. So people aren't really using guidebooks anymore. And it's pretty obvious when you think about why. It's because players like these have come along, and people are using them on their mobile phones and on their desktops to kind of orient themselves when they're traveling around, and to work out what to book and where to go. But if you think about the type of information that was in guidebooks, there was kind of the listings type information, and that's these players, right? These are about hotels, these are about places to eat, potentially experiences. These are the listings type information. But that's not really why you travel in the first place. So when I travel, I want to learn about the culture, I want to learn about the food, I want to learn about the history, I want to learn about the stories. I want that kind of emotional engagement the type of thing we saw in the video. I really want to understand the places. That's why I travel. I don't travel to find a cheap hotel or to find something with a 4.3 rating on TripAdvisor. I travel to really experience all the interesting differences and people and cultures that are out there in the world. Guidebooks used to help you do that, but now they don't. Now nobody's using them. So where is the app for that? Where is the app that helps you explore the world in an interesting way? So that's what we are doing at Culture Trip. And in fact, this is our mission, to use creativity and technology to empower our users to explore all the interesting differences between people, places, and cultures around the world. And we thought very hard about this mission, and this is kind of everything we do is furthering this mission. So exploring the differences when you're traveling, but also we help people explore these differences when they're at home, when they're bored on the bus, when they're just kind of looking for interesting content. And we thought very hard about exploring differences. We actually started with celebrating differences. And then we realized that there were some differences that were really interesting, but we probably didn't want to celebrate them, but we were interested in exploring them. And so that's why we settled on exploring differences. So that's basically what we are and what we're trying to do. And as I'm sure all of you know, we just raised a large amount of money to basically do this, to become the travel guide, the cultural guide for the 21st century. And how do you do that when you're freed up from this legacy of paper? So we have a blank canvas. That is the challenge ahead of us. That's the exciting mission we're on. And I'm not going to tell you exactly how we do it, but I'm just going to talk about a few things which are kind of, if you're going to become the travel guide for the 21st century, then what are the type of things that you would invent, that you would want to work on? So first of all, let's start with the obvious stuff. So you no longer have to just think about paper. So you can think about every format. So we saw videos, we have animators, we have illustrators, photography, obviously. But if you get a bit more thinking about this, this is me in my garden this morning, taken by my 13-year-old son, surrounded by various figures from Star Wars. So, you know, augmented reality, location aware, we are actively thinking, how do you make a scavenger hunt around a city where you walk around with the app and you get clues and you look around and find the next clue and it directs you to the next place. Like, if you're thinking about the formats and the content and the type of things you can do, there's nothing that's off the table for us right now. Also, obviously, if you're not limited to a book, then you can make it searchable. You can make it personalizable. So it's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It gets to know you over time. Also, it can be location aware. It can notify you of the right things at the right time. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about you know, what sort of notifications, and he had this plan to send people classical notifications for various different types of classical music as you walk past a composer's house in a city. I thought it was quite interesting. But you know, again, nothing's off the table. What could we do here? On the monetization side, it's actually fairly easy. If you're in travel, if you're thinking about travel guide, and you're thinking about how do we help people, how do we inspire people about places, how do we orient them to that place, then that's something that people have a lot of empathy with. And it's possible to make stuff that's really engaging, that people get attached to as a brand. Very different to something like Booking.com, where basically it's about cheap and it's about variety, but nobody really loves Booking.com. Whereas it is possible for us to create a brand where people aspire, they come back, they share content. And of course, if people are traveling, then traveling is an expensive business. They do actually need to spend money. And so the way we think about monetizing is we will help our users spend that money well. If you think about that inspirational layer of the content that we're developing, it's the very top of the funnel. So our users come in for that content, and then we help them understand where they're going. We tell them the inspiring stories. We help them work out which neighborhoods they want to visit. We help them work out a high-level plan, and then they find out we also offer them hotels, and we offer them restaurants, we offer them events. It's very easy to help them spend their money well. And then finally, and this is possibly the biggest challenge we have, and the biggest technical challenge we have, is how do we cover the world with continuously up-to-date content? So if we were a travel magazine, this would be easy. We'd just produce a whole load of content. It would be hit or miss. It would cover some areas. It would leave other areas out. But we are a service where users come to us and they search up where they're traveling to. And then our job is to provide them with a consistent, inspiring, up-to-date, educational, informative experience for wherever they're going. And so if you think about the challenges in that, we currently have nearly 20 million users a month coming to our website. We're producing about 3,000 articles a month. And what we're producing is a big system which allows us to understand where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, what articles and videos and everything else are performing well, what are performing badly, and kind of analyzing all of that data and feeding it back to our network of creators all around the world who are producing the content so that they know exactly the right things to work on. So this is my final slide. This kind of sums up everything we're doing, and this was described actually by Elena, who's in the audience, as the mother of all machines, which I thought was quite right. So we have our 20 million users a month at the top. They interact with all of our content, which produces, where we're doing a lot of analysis to understand content performance. So that data and analysis layer eventually becomes a front end for our creators, which we're building, and becomes a product in its own right as we scale this creator network we have around the world. We currently have around 400. As we scale them to 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. And that data and analysis flows into the creators in terms of guiding them what to create in order to fill the gaps and make this layer of content, this comprehensive coverage around the world as good as it can possibly be. And then that flows into our content pool, and then we have our personalization, our recommendation, our new formats, which then serve that up to our users, and the cycle goes round and round again. So, very quick, that is an overview of Culture Trip, where the kind of main challenges are. Obviously, very little detail in there, but we're right at the beginning of the journey, and we have a lot of fuel in the tank. And so with that, I will take any questions you have.
Hey, we'll do this. I said I wasn't going to run around with this microphone, but I will, actually.
How do you ensure your content is safe?
Good question. Great question. So it's not user-generated content, is the first thing to say. It doesn't just go straight up on the platform. So these are freelancers who work for us around the world, and there is actually a copy editing process. So every piece of content goes through a copy editing control. So it's in some ways very similar to any media organization, just in terms of how it's checked. It's not like YouTube or something like that, where I used to work for years, so I know all about it. Hi.
Hi. Just a quick question, just for the record. I'm not a lawyer, so don't worry about the answer. But I'm quite curious because I work with personalization a lot. And obviously the last few months have been quite difficult in being allowed to use the personalization aspect of the change in the regulations. You talked about producing 3,000 articles per month. You must have had to pump out quite a lot of GDPR compliance emails. What was the actual feedback on that? Did everybody optimize and say, yes, sign me in? I mean, did anybody actually say, no, I don't want this anymore?
I don't have the numbers on me, so I can't tell you exactly. We definitely had some people who came back and said, actually, can you get rid of my data? And we, along with many other companies I'm sure represented in this room, went through a whole process of working out exactly what we had to do and put in place all the right processes and mechanisms. So we had some people come back. I think some people had kind of forgotten we were on their mailing list. I think every company's had that. And then suddenly they get that email and they're like, ooh, and come back. I don't think anybody came back and said, thank you for sending me that GDPR notice. You have improved my life immeasurably from sending me that GDPR notice. But I'm sure some people felt that.
Hi, I also have a question actually on personalization. How do you prompt users to create accounts, log in, so that you can start collecting data on their usage and also be able to know that they're using across devices, unless you tend to have like users who are like only on one type of device?
No, we definitely have users across, and you're absolutely right. Until they're logged in, it's very, very hard, well, basically impossible to track by cookies. So there's kind of a number of different features we're in the process of launching and have recently launched. So one of them is just this idea of a wish list. And this is very simple, which is as you're browsing around the content, you come across a lot of things we talk about that you want to save. And so now, this is literally only launched about 3 weeks ago, you have the ability to log in and save things to wish lists. And you could have multiple named wish lists for different trips. And in fact, those wish lists, I mean, they're similar to other kind of named wish lists that other people like TripAdvisor and Airbnb have. What's interesting about us is the content you save in a wish list becomes content in its own right. So in some ways, this is how UGC gets into the platform. In other words, if you're going somewhere and you start putting together a wish list of the things you want to see and the articles you find interesting and the restaurants you want to visit and the history and the culture, and start putting together this kind of dossier. So this is something you can share with everybody else who's going on the trip with you. But also, and we haven't launched this yet, but there's a lot of conversations going on internally, making this public. So having public wish lists, it turns into something a bit like a Spotify playlist. So those wish lists, we've even talked about calling them culture trips, but they turn into Spotify playlists for travel, effectively. It's one way to think about them. So I think lots of features like that, which you can only really access with a login, start to get really interesting. And once we become known for that sort of thing, logins will come.
The question which I have is, what approach do you follow to plan the portfolio to determine like which feature will deliver maximum value and where to invest and where to not, and how to test it sort of early?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Say again.
In what approach does Culture Trip follow to plan the portfolio? So when you introduce the new features, there will be a expected value against the feature which you want to realize as an organization.
So let me see if I understand. So what process do we use to plan the product features that we launch?
Yeah.
So great question. I will try not to have a really big answer. So we do OKRs, which is something I brought. It's something Google's been doing for years. Facebook does a version 2. Many other companies do it. And so these are objectives and key results, and we do it on a quarterly planning cycle. And basically what happens is various cross-functional teams within the organization own certain objectives. Like there'll be a cross-functional team that owns monetization, there'll be a cross-functional team that owns everything behind that editorial infrastructure we talked about. And their product managers or the tech leads and the designers, during the course of the quarter. In fact, they have longer range roadmaps, but during the course of the quarter, they're continually collecting things and sort of planning out what they're going to do next quarter. And at the end of every quarter, everybody kind of says what they're going to do within the company for that quarter. All of the teams say, this is what we want to do this quarter to further our objectives. And everyone kind of looks around and makes sure that everybody's aligned. And then you go into the quarter, and you're kind of in execution mode. And then you kind of put heads up at the end of the quarter, and then you're into execution mode again. So it's a way of basically, it's called management by objectives. So you have the mission, you work out what objectives ladder up to the mission. Various teams have bits of those objectives. The teams themselves are then responsible for working out how they're going to further their objectives. So everybody's empowered as you go down the hierarchy to move their bit, but safe in the knowledge that their bit ladders up to the mission in the right way. Sorry, it was longer answer than I planned.
Just a quick one. Have you any plans to tie up with other firms which are in the same sort of space, like TripIt, or even some of these new style banks, which like Revolut, that enable simple foreign currency exchange?
So nothing is off the table. As I say, we're in that kind of early stage where really, I mean, if people here have played with the app and played with the website, it's still fairly basic. And yeah, so anything which will move us towards the mission, and there's always that kind of build by partnership conversation to be had. So we're open to anything.
Hi, so a bit of a meta question really, but why did you choose to pitch this product to us, this particular audience today? And what's the call to action from us?
So I realized when I introduced myself, I didn't say who I was or anything, right? I'm at risk of making this like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I used to be an engineer as well. I'm now SVP technology. Let's be honest, the reason that people do these events is because we're recruiting. We think we've got some difficult problems to solve, and we know that if you put on interesting talks, the best engineers come and listen to them because the best engineers want to learn, and that's what it is. It's, I'm not going to lie to you, we're not doing this for, well, we are doing it for the good of our souls, and because publishing Jeff's ideas and Dave's ideas is a good thing for the industry. But yeah, we're recruiting, right? That's why we said this stuff.
Hi. What kind of marketing have you done? Because personally, I haven't seen many advertising about Culture Trip, and I believe that I'm a target audience. And the 20 million users, unique users per month is a lot in such a short period of time. So can you just mention a few?
So we've done hardly any marketing. I mean, the marketing has been our content. We spend a lot of money on content, and then the content goes out on Google and goes out on Facebook. And that's how most people come across us right now, is either on Facebook, in your Facebook feed, something shared, or in a Google search result. And you've probably read a Culture Trip article, you just didn't know it. Like, we're the biggest travel brand you've never heard of at the moment. And we literally just hired a chief marketing officer, and his job is to make sure you have heard of us. So it'll change.
I think that's got to be it. I'm sorry,
Okay.
if you didn't get your question in, Nick will be stuffing his face with pizza downstairs later, and you can ask him. So